Deb, and I'm here to read a Passover story. As you know, Passover is a holiday which helps us remember when we were able to escape from Egypt and become free. And as part of this holiday, we like to have a Seder, and usually the youngest child will ask 4 very important questions. Now, this book is called The Best 4 Questions. It's written by Rochelle Burke and illustrated by Melanie Florian. And I'm sure that many of you have questions all the time. But let's think about what this little girl's questions are and why they're important. The Best 4 Questions. I'm reading this book with the permission of Carben Publishing. Passover is almost here, said Marcy excitedly. Yes, said Daddy. So let's clean up these breadcrumbs. And tomorrow night, Marcy, it will be your turn to read the 4 questions. Hey, that's my job, said Jake. The youngest person at the Seder gets to ask the 4 questions, said Daddy. Now that Marcy's learned to read, it's her turn to ask them. She'll mess it up, grumbled Jake. Marcy remembered her brother asking the 4 questions at the Seder last year. The grown-ups all said they were proud of him. Marcy was sure she could do a great job with the 4 questions. After all, she knew a lot about questions. She asked them all the time. Why does that man have hair in his ears? Can I have a pet elephant? Are we there yet? Asking 4 questions on Passover would be easy, thought Marcy, and hers would be the best ones ever. I'll help you practice, said Mommy. But Marcy didn't want help. Can't I practice by myself, she asked. That's 1 question already. Marcy grinned and skipped off up to her room. Mommy, she called a little later, should I wear my ruffled dress or the one with polka dots? Will Aunt Jessica be there? Can I bring my hamster? Do I need a sweater? Enough questions, said Mommy. It's time to get ready for the Seder. But Marcy was getting ready. Can't you see I'm practicing my questions, she asked. At Grandma and Poppy's house, Marcy practiced more. Is that the Seder plate? What's on it? Can I carry it to the table? Grandma handed her the most beautiful Seder plate and pointed to one of the little dishes. This is horseradish. We call it maror. And this is haroset, made with apples and nuts. And here's a bone, and here's an egg, and here's a sprig of parsley. Poppy sat at the head of the table with a big cushy pillow on his chair. Daddy opened his Haggadah to begin the Seder. Marcy wiggled in her seat, waiting for her big moment. Finally, it was time for the 4 questions. Poppy smiled. Are you ready, Marcy? How many matzo balls are in Grandma's chicken soup? Why does Uncle Benji always fall asleep during the Seder? Are worms kosher for Passover? And is horseradish made from horses? Marcy beamed and looked around the table. Mommy's mouth dropped open. Grandma scratched her head, and Poppy chuckled. What kind of questions are those? Asked Jake. You're supposed to ask the ones in the Haggadah. Marcy turned as red as the Seder wine and sank into her chair. You know, said Poppy, I've always wondered how many matzo balls there are in Grandma's chicken soup. And if I know Jake's eating habits, asked Daddy, we should probably find out if worms are kosher for Passover. Everyone took turns answering Marcy's excellent questions. "There are 24 matzo balls in my pot of chicken soup," said Grandma, and I'm sure you know that means 24. "Horseradish is a spicy vegetable, not part of a horse," said Aunt Jessica. "Worms aren't kosher anytime," said Mama. "Plus, they're just plain gross. And I do not fall asleep at the Seder," huffed Uncle Benny, "although sometimes I do rest my eyes for a little bit." Then Poppy said, "Maybe Marcy would like to read the 4 questions from the Haggadah now." Marcy looked down at the book. There were some awfully big words. "Can Jake read them with me?" asked Marcy. "That's another question," Jake said, but he grinned. They turned to the 4 questions from the Haggadah and read them together. Number 1. Why is this night different from all other nights? On other nights, we eat bread or matzah. Why do we eat only matzah tonight? 2. On other nights, we eat all kinds of vegetables. Why do we eat maror tonight? 3. On other nights, we do not dip our foods. Why do we dip our food twice tonight? 4. On the other nights, we eat our meals sitting any way we like. Why do we lean on pillows tonight? When Marcy looked up from her book, everyone was smiling. She felt very proud. "Good job," said Poppy. "Uncle Benji, can you please give us the answers to the 4 questions?" But Uncle Benji was fast asleep. Answers to the 4 questions. I bet you know all these already. The 4 questions are actually 4 parts of a single question. Why is this night different from all other nights? Number 1. We eat matzah to remind us that when the Jews left slavery in Egypt, they had no time for their bread to rise. They took the dough on their journey and baked it into flat, hard crackers called matzah. 2. We eat maror, bitter horseradish, to remember the bitter and cruel way the Pharaoh treated the Jewish people when they were slaves in Egypt. 3. We dip bitter herbs into haroset to remind us how hard the Israelite slaves worked making bricks for Pharaoh. The mixture of apple, nuts, and wine looks like the clay they used to make their bricks. We also dip parsley into salt water. The parsley reminds us that spring is here. The salt water reminds us of the tears of the Jewish slaves. 4. We lean on a pillow to be comfortable, which reminds us that once we were slaves, but now we are free. The end. And then in the back gives a little explanation of Passover, how it's a week-long holiday that we celebrate in the spring, and we are celebrating our freedom from being slaves. And we have our Seder, we read our Haggadah, we say prayers, we eat delicious foods, and sometimes we even sing. The end. Thank you for your wonderful listening, and I hope that you have a wonderful Seder with your family. And maybe you'll get to do the 4 questions this year.